AI-enabled work. What does that mean for employability? Derek Latrell, Ayala Education co-founder and chief learning officer of Mapua Malayan Digital College, joins us live. Motorists may have to brace for another oil price hike next Tuesday. Jetty Petroleum President Leo Bellas reports diesel prices may climb on July 28 by up to 6 pesos and 50 cents per liter, gasoline by up to 6 pesos. These figures are based on 4 days of trading at the Mine of Platts, Singapore. The increase comes as global oil prices rebounded due to concerns of further disruption in oil supply flows. Benchmark Brent crude crosses $100 a barrel for the first time since May, rising as high as 6% on Thursday. As of 8:30 a.m. Philippine time, Brent is trading at $100 a barrel, up less than 0.1%. West Texas Intermediate sitting at $92 per barrel, up 0.1%. Brent climbed after Houthi rebels claimed attacks on 2 Saudi oil tankers attempting to cross the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, the gateway of the Red Sea in Yemen. U.S. President Donald Trump warns that he will punish the Houthis if they continue to attack vessels. The Bab al-Mandeb Strait accounts for about 12% of the world's seaborne oil flows before the Gulf War. It's an alternate route for oil coming out of the Middle East after Iran blocked the Strait of Hormuz. Meantime, the Senate Committee on Energy yesterday grilled the Energy Regulatory Commission on high electricity rates. ERC Chair Francis Saturnino Juan said the agency could only control distribution charges, not generation charges. ERC is now looking into the terms of reference of utilities' power service agreements.
We actually issued an advisory para doon sa lahat ng magpapa-CSP. Kung hindi pa sila umabot doon sa punto na magpa-publish sila ng ITB or invitation to bid, kailangan na ibigay nila sa amin ang terms of reference. Kung sa tingin namin ay mayroong kuntsabahan or mayroong badges of anti-competitive behavior na mangyayari doon sa CSP i-conduct ng ating mga utilities po.
Alam niyo, sir, may doon nakita natin yung problema. Medyo naisahan ho tayo lahat. Naisahan kayo, may connivance, may collusion. Sila nag-usap-usap. Kaya ang tao ang kawawa, yung consumer ang kawawa.
The Bases Conversion and Development Authority, or BCDA, says the proposed PAC Silica Technology Hub in New Clark City and Tarlac could attract up to $70 billion in investments once fully developed. BCDA says PAC Silica will be an ecosystem of high-tech industries of semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and advanced manufacturing. The 1,620-hectare industrial district is expected to create up to 190,000 direct jobs and generate as much as $200 billion in exports. BCDA says contract negotiations are set to begin this year, with construction targeted to start in 2028.
Development. Nakikita natin, yan ang potential, $40 to $70 billion na po. Inaral na po namin yan at yan po ay base sa siyensya. Hindi po yan pangamba na haka-haka, kundi yan po ay based on science.
The Philippine IT BPM industry recently revised its 2028 revenue and employment targets as it adapts to AI adoption and intensifying global competition, shifting the story from headcount to higher value work. To help explain what that means for education and employability, we're joined by Derek Latrell, Chief Learning Officer of Mapua Malayan Digital College and co-founder of Ayala Education. Good seeing you, Derek. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Ken.
All right, so we've heard that revision that was reported just a couple of days ago, 2028 revision for the IT BPM industry. From an education standpoint, what does that tell you about the pace of the reinvention, if you will, of our labor, our workforce when it comes to AI?
We have to move faster, right? Obviously. For example, this afternoon, Fred and I are meeting with folks from IBPAP to do some planning around that for 4 hours. I think it's about finding deeper integrations and about quickly transforming what's happening in college.
But whatever's happened to, say, digital literacy, because that was the operative word 10 years ago, and I thought we were ahead of whatever was coming before us.
Right.
But what's happened in those 10 years from digital literacy to AI fluency?
Right. So you have digital literacy, it moves into AI literacy, which then moves to AI fluency, and that's the movement that's happening so fast for us. I think AI literacy is about knowing what's possible, knowing what models you can engage, knowing how you can engage them. AI fluency is about being able to deliver that value that companies are looking for. There's huge P&L opportunities for every company with AI, and so if you're literate, maybe you know how to do fine-tuning of models. Maybe you know how to apply agentic AI. Those kinds of things are what the labor force is looking for, and what colleges are working to respond very quickly with.
But respond to what? I mean, how are companies responding? First and foremost, you mentioned agentic AI, a pretty important operative word right now.
Right.
What are the companies needing?
So what agentic AI is it's a system. Instead of just prompting a foundational model and getting a response back, it's a system that you set up to run on its own. It's agentic AI that works within a workflow process, right? So teaching students how to build parts of that, whether you're an IT person who's going to build the exoskeleton of the agentic AI, you're going to use LangChain to do that kind of stuff, learning how to do those pieces, or whether you're a BSBA student who's going to learn to write the requirements, because the requirements, the agentic setting up the exoskeleton is not the hard part, it's actually the requirements. So the BSBA student knowing how to get out there, get into a company, understand a company's deep context, and convert that into requirements for the agentic AI, there's a need on both sides for everybody to come out more AI literate.
And I see that gap. That gap is actually widening between what workers are, or what companies are needing, and how schools are developing the future of work.
Yeah.
So how big is that gap right now, and what are you trying to solve as an educator?
It's big. It's quite large. I mean,
in the Philippine context,
yeah,
bigger than any other ASEAN challenge when it comes to AI.
Probably, but even in the U.S. context, it's still big. So it's not that the Philippines is way behind. Everybody's running to keep up with this. Curriculums have to be rewritten so that you're not only learning with AI, like AI is a tool to learn, but you're learning to work with AI. You're learning to produce things with AI. And we're in a complete rework of curriculums accordingly, for example, in our group of schools. So it's a challenge to keep up with that pace, but the great news is we use AI to speed up our work in changing. So it's helping us even make that transition.
Right, so I presume AI is a tool in the process of actually changing the curriculum. How then do you ensure that that remains a tool, that there is always that human in the loop?
Yeah, so from a company's perspective, when you have agentic AI, you set up that agentic AI to check with humans at various points. It doesn't just run a process on its own from beginning to end. There's key points where you need human decision making, where AI is not the best at decision making yet because it doesn't have all the goals and contexts in the fine detail that change on a daily, weekly basis as oil prices changes, as everything changes, right? So you have to get the human in the loop. From school perspective, we have to mirror that, right? We have to show, we're teaching two things. We're teaching how does a student work with AI where AI is great at working, and how does a student think in ways AI doesn't think well yet? Because there are still ways that humans think better than AI does. And so you go from just teaching this like a tool, like it's the new Excel spreadsheet, to thinking about the way AI thinks and engaging students to work with AI where that's key, that human in the loop part.
But what about the changing of the mindset when it comes to the institutions who have opted just to remain at AI awareness? And what is the risk in that?
Yeah.
That gap doesn't get resolved because companies won't budge.
Yeah.
They're still in the experimentation stage.
Yeah. The risk is that if you if you say, oh, well, AI is something that's just going to replace human thought, so we want to teach people to think and not bring AI into the classroom, the risk is that you're putting people out into the workforce that aren't in high demand. Companies are going to want three things. They're going to want somebody who can think like always, like high level thinkers. They're going to want people who know, but that changes, right? The thinking changes. Can you think with AI? Can you think where AI doesn't think well? They want people who understand the context of their business. Because when you write those requirements for agentic AI, if you don't know the business context, those requirements aren't going to be written well. So they want high contextual graduates, people who really understand, and that's something new for colleges. How do I produce someone who knows the HRM business in the Philippines, or someone who knows healthcare in a U.S. context? You've got to get much more contextual. The third thing I think that colleges want, or employers want, is they want somebody who can build things with AI. What can you build? What can you create with AI? If you have those three things, companies are going to gobble you up. You're going to have multiple offers.
Have you built something within the college? It's now in prototype, perhaps, that a company would be able to say that it had moved beyond AI awareness and into AI fluency?
Sure, yeah. We're prototyping right now a system with Ayala Corporation, Jobs, and they're providing a bunch of anonymized information about jobs and employees into that system. We're providing information from all our college groups into that system, and we're finding matches. What those matches do is, it's not just that here's a student who's 100% match for this job, but it might be a 70% match, an 80% match, and then we look at how do we close that gap in that fourth year of college. Do we close it through some additional learning? Do we close it through an OJT that's specified in a certain way? But we find strong matches, and then we finish those matches, and so that creates a much better labor market and a much greater intimacy. So we're prototyping that right now between the iPeople schools, colleges, and the Ayala Corporation. When that works well, then I think we can proliferate that in other places.
You started this conversation saying that there has to be more progress in the way of establishing AI fluency. If, for instance, we fail to, what is the worst possible scenario for the IT BPM industry, which is a great economic contributor?
Yeah. The worst possibility is honestly work migrating. It's not that the work's going to go away. It's going to migrate to Eastern Europe. It's going to migrate toward China. Talking to some of my friends in that space, we're seeing that because there's technical talent there that is readily available. So there's competition. And either we step up to that, or we'll see migration work out.
It's both a challenge and an opportunity. Thank you
It
so
is.
much for your insights, Derek. Appreciate it. Derek Latrail of MMCA. President Sherwin Gatchalian is hoping President Bongbong Marcos will lay out his plans to revive the economy in his State of the Nation address Monday. Gatchalian says the country has faced a challenging year, with several analysts and credit rating agencies lowering their economic growth forecasts for the Philippines. He notes even the government lowered its economic growth target from 5 to 6% to just 3.5 to 4.5%.
Poverty reduction natin, makaka-apekto yan sa employment. So, yan naman ang magiging thrust ng Senate, at yan naman yung aking expectations sa SONA, na how do we jumpstart our economy so that we get back on track.
Aside from economic recovery, Gatchalian also hopes the president will outline reforms in government and detail measures to prevent corruption schemes, such as in the flood control scandal, from happening again. Malacanang is not ruling out earth-shaking announcements in President Bongbong Marcos's upcoming State of the Nation address. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro says the president is fine-tuning his speech, which he personally wrote. Although she has seen its key points, Castro declined to say whether Marcos will make any major announcements during Monday's SONA.
So, antayan nilang po natin kung anong sasabihin ng Pangulo, dahil nakita naman din po natin definitely hindi mawawala ang mga naging accomplishments ng administrasyon. Pero kung ano pa ang kanyang sasabihin, hintayin po natin sa Lunes.
And it's all systems go with the House of Representatives for July 27th. Sauna Day begins with the opening of the 20th Congress' second regular session in the morning. Security is already tight, with only essential personnel allowed entry via QR code-enabled sauna passes. House Sergeant-at-Arms Ferdinand Melchor de la Cruz says authorities cannot afford to let their guard down amid continuing threats against the president.
It's not a lockdown, it's a lockout. Meaning, yung mga pumapasok are essential personnel to make sure that yung may mga security clearances yung mga nakakapasok.
The NCRPO goes in full alert starting today. Over 20,000 police officers to be deployed across Metro Manila alongside personnel from other agencies. Catch our special coverage as the President delivers his fifth State of the Nation address on Monday, July 27, only here on One News. You're watching Money Talks. Coming up, the government's budget deficit widens in June, and the Philippine peso again on its weakest on Thursday. Keep it here on One News. Countries facing new tariffs over the supposed failure to curb producing goods through forced labor. Philippine exports to the U.S. will be charged with a 12.5% tariff starting Friday, local time. What is your source for this one? Got that? Failed to impose and effectively enforce. All right, go ahead. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. The Philippines is one of 60 countries facing new tariffs from the United States over its supposed failure to curb producing goods through forced labor. Philippine exports to the U.S. will be charged with a 12.5% tariff starting Friday local time after the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative found that Manila, quote, failed to impose and effectively enforce a forced labor import prohibition. Exempted from the tariffs, though, are semiconductor, agricultural, and raw mineral exports. The move is U.S. President Donald Trump's latest effort to restore his tariff regime after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down his reciprocal duties back in February. Trump is using Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 to levy new tariffs by penalizing foreign countries who violate trade agreements or engage in unreasonable and discriminatory policies that burden U.S. commerce. The government's budget deficit widened in June as state spending continued to outpace revenue growth. Data from the Bureau of Treasury show the budget gap grew more than 9% to 264.3 billion pesos in June, up from the 241.6 billion pesos a year ago. It also widened from May's 198.5 billion peso deficit. The Treasury says government spending rose to nearly 579 billion pesos last month, driven by higher national tax allotment shares for local government units, subsidies for Rice for All program, as well as payments for foreign-assisted rail projects. For the first half of the year, the budget deficit reached 786.8 billion pesos. That's nearly half of the government's revised full-year deficit target of 1.66 trillion pesos. Quick check on the Philippine peso and see how it's opened on this Friday. It is staying weak at its weakest level of 61.75 against the greenback. Traders continue to await stronger catalysts and developments in the Middle East. Mike Ricafort of RCBC says the Bangko Sentral may have also intervened in the forex market to smoothen volatility. Ricafort sees the peso trading today to between 61.60 and 61.80 to the dollar. Checking in on the overseas markets, U.S. stock futures are little changed in overnight trading. The Dow, the S&P, and the Nasdaq are up by less than 0.1% each. Asian markets are losing ground in early trading Friday. South Korea's Kospi falls 3.1%. Japan's Nikkei 225 slides 2.8%, and Australia's ASX 200 sheds 0.5%. U.S. markets tumbled Thursday as investors dumped tech stocks over renewed AI jitters and global oil prices, hitting $100 a barrel anew. The Nasdaq fell 2.1%, S&P 1.2%, and the Dow nearly 1%. Google's parent Alphabet dropped 7.1% after forecasting higher capital spending this year, while Tesla slid 15% after its free cash flow turned negative in the second quarter. PSEI has rebounded yesterday on the back of bargain hunting activities. The stock market rose nearly 0.25% to close at 6,283. AB Capital Securities notes that the market briefly tested 6,300 several times, but failed to hold above it, reflecting cautious trading. Total turnover value thinned to 4.99 billion pesos, with offshore investors turning net sellers with outflows at 76.61 million. The broader all-shares index climbed nearly 0.2%, with the sectoral gauges mostly gaining ground. 10-year government bond yields ticked up to 7.543%. The latest corporate stories. Department of Foreign Affairs clarifies the provisional understanding with China in the conduct of routine and resupply or RORE missions in Ayungin Shoal. Chinese ambassador to the Philippines, Jing Quan, earlier referred to a provisional agreement as justification of Chinese Coast Guard's latest run-up with its Philippine counterparts in Ayungin Shoal, which injured 2 Navy personnel.
Keep the status quo. Okay, we all agree to the resupply, agreement. But we found they're doing something new.
But the DFA clarified that this 2024 agreement is only an understanding between the Philippines and China to prevent misunderstandings in the conduct of RORE missions. It does not require the Philippines to seek permission to undertake these routine activities. Meantime, China yesterday used water cannons and dangerous maneuvers against ships of the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources in Bajo de Masinloc. No injuries or damages were reported. In Malacanang, Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said President Marcos wanted a reset of ties between Manila and Beijing amid escalating tensions in the contested waters.
Na mangyari dito ng Pangulo ay hindi na maulit ang mga pangyayari at ma-reset sana ang relasyon ng China at ng Pilipinas sa mas magandang pakikipag-ugnayan. Nadinig siya ng ambassador ng China, nadinig din ng Pangulo ng ambassador ng China. So with that, sana magkaroon ng mas magandang resulta.
Marcos took a phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump last night, where they tackled global economic and security issues. Trump vowed to discuss Philippines' concerns with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Xi will personally visit the U.S. on September 24. In related news, the Philippines and Sweden are looking to expand defense cooperation in maritime security, cybersecurity, defense, and defense technology. Swedish Defense Minister Pal Johnson also reiterated his country's support for the Philippines' 2016 arbitral award on the South China Sea. And the latest corporate stories making headlines this Friday. Shares of Lopez-led companies rallied Thursday after reports a so-called White Knight had made an initial payment toward a planned investment in the Lopez Group. The Philippine Star reported the Lopez family has agreed in principle to sell its shares in Lopez Inc. While sources say the initial payment reached at least 1 billion pesos. Ayala Corporation has kept its spot in the FTSE for Good Index Series for a 12th straight year, with ASEN, Ayala Land, BPI, and Globe also retaining their places. The Global ESG Index recognizes companies for their performance in areas such as corporate governance, climate action, and anti-corruption. Ayala says the recognition also strengthens its access to sustainable financing. And Bank Philippines has officially become the country's 7th digital bank after securing a license from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. The central bank says it granted a bank certificate authority earlier this month, upgrading its rural bank license. Bank began operating as a digital bank on July 18th. Quick check again on the Philippine peso and see how that's begun trading. It has fallen. It's now a lot weaker, 61.80 to the dollar. Peso stayed at its weakest level of 61.75 against the greenback over the past 2 trading sessions, apart from today. And again, one of the stories we're closely monitoring today, the Philippines, now one of the 60 countries facing new tariffs from the U.S. over its supposed failure to curb producing goods through forced labor. Philippine exports to the U.S. will be charged with a 12.5% tariff effective July 28th, after the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative found that Manila, quote, failed to impose and effectively enforce a forced labor import prohibition. Exempted from the tariffs, though, are semiconductor, agricultural, and raw mineral exports. And before we go, 2 new horror films are set to hit cinemas this October. Opening October 21st is Clayface. The film stars Tom Rhys-Harris as a rising actor who transforms into a revenge-driven monster in a story about identity, obsession, and ambition.
You want to know how I feel? The people I trusted betrayed me. The justice system failed me. They stole my career, my money, my life. I'm a monster.
On October 7th, Jessica Chastain stars in Other Mommy, a supernatural psychological horror film about a mom trying to protect her daughter from a mysterious entity that takes her own form.
Whoa. What were you cooking? Bella? You need a grown-up to help keep you.
Scary Mummy. That is it for Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Catch us again Monday at 9 a.m. Kapatid, we are One News, your side all the time. Morning Matters returns at 9:30 a.m. Have a great day ahead.